So this is a series of 22 teachings, which is constructed for purposes of focus around the tarot, but it's also including the 7 stages, shall we call them, of the Elven Star paths. And we're studying the path of life first. And we're also studying this general story through the eyes of the Holy Trinity in astrology, Pluto, Uranus and Neptune. And I've applied all of these kind of esoteric principles to look at my own life story. And I've gone through all of these phases of learning and teaching in my study of esoteric principles. And I found them to work, or to put it better, to be workable. I think these are best understood not so much as truth as tools. And we can use all the tools that we can understand in order to gain a greater sense of awakening to the universal truth of life. And it's dressed up in terms that kind of suggest that we're never going to do it. You know, to be a realized being, to be enlightened, to be this, that, and the other is something that Christ did or Buddha did, and it doesn't seem to be within our grasp according to the traditional teachings that I was given. But I don't find that to be helpful. I think what's more helpful is to make it pretty clear that if you want this, you can have it. Seek and ye shall find. And it's been the abiding force of my life that I want to know what's going on. There's some mystery here. It isn't the way it seems. That became pretty clear when I was very young. And so all of these things that I've done in studying the esoteric models that we've got, that has helped me create my own understanding of how it all is. And to have such an understanding is tremendously liberating and empowering. So that's what we're doing. And today we're focusing on the magician energy. And this is one of the 3 mysteries within the path of life. We are approaching each of the 7 paths as having 3 different components. And we learn about those components in the Holy Trinity. So we begin with Uranus. Uranus is the spark of a new idea. And that free spirit, that essential sense we have, I must be free, I deserve to be free, it's my birthright to be free. We feel that, all of us, every one of us feels that so strongly, that I have a right to be free and to do it my way. Well, where's the evidence of this? There is no evidence that freedom has ever existed on the planet, or ever could, and yet we all feel it, and that's the Uranus energy. So we begin studying the path of life by looking at the first energy of Uranus, and we see that this can be helpfully understood studying the magician in the tarot. Now, the first thing about freedom of life is that you need to realize that we're in the grossest, most dense reality that there is. The other planes of consciousness, the plane of the astral, the plane of the heart, and so on. These planes are less demanding on one level, because the plane of the earth, the form of the earth, the structure, the containment, the slowness of the energy here is a real binding force. And its purpose is to check out whether what we have in the mind actually works. Is it consistent? Most of the people that I meet have not a consistent philosophy. They believe 2 things which are mutually exclusive. Many versions of that pairing of opposites. And that won't work. It just isn't workable. And how do I know that? Because on the physical plane, it cannot be reconciled. That's how we all know that what's workable or not either works or it doesn't in the physical plane. So if we have an idea about our philosophy and protocols and principles and practices and so on, we need to make sure that they work, because if they don't, they're not. They are not principles and practices, they are lies. They are self-deceptions. And most people live in that illusory world. The ideas that people have, they just don't check out. Wouldn't it be nice if everyone was free? No, it wouldn't, actually. If everyone was free, then freedom would mean nothing. There has to be containment for there to be a concept of freedom. Wouldn't it be lovely if everyone was given all the food they needed and there was no hunger in the world? No, it wouldn't. It's a silly idea. There needs to be a problem if we are to appreciate a solution. And here we're coming towards the real secret of the magician. Magic depends upon two things. It depends upon creating a sacred atmosphere within which the laws of magic work and having clear intentionality. If you have those two things, then you have magic. And we don't need to dress it up with wands and pentacles and stuff like that. Those two things are available to every one of us every day of our lives. What are the conditions of our life? Do we live in an atmosphere which is somewhat magical? Does it have beauty in it? Does it have sparkle and excitement? Is there a sense of vitality? The life force is around us. Can we feel that? Do we know what sacredness is? Do we know how to create sacredness? Do we believe in sacredness? A lot of people do not. And that means they have no access to the world of magic. You have to believe in magic for magic to work, obviously. And most people have been persuaded that it's silly nonsense. Well, it isn't. It's workable. And the things that make it work are to create sacredness in your atmosphere when you're working it, so that when you introduce into this very special world that you've created of sacredness, you introduce clear-minded thought and intentionality, then that is like the spark of a sperm entering an egg. That's the exact equivalent. That's how life is. There needs to be a male acting upon a female. There needs to be a female drawing a male force. So if we think about the atmosphere of our lives as that which is the female energy that draws our spark of imagination and intentionality into it, then we have that female-male formula going on. If we think of our imagination being a sacred gift, that we're actually creating thought out of nothing. We create thought out of nothing because we are free to do so. That's the imagination. And then we look around for somewhere to plant the seed of our idea, just like the sperm is looking around for somewhere to plant itself, in order that there is something new and special, uniquely created out of that formula. And the magician knows how to do this in the world, the metaphor which is the world. The magician can make things occur to bring ideas into form. Now, each of us has that ability. There is no one alive today without that ability. However, we are trained, we are controlled by forces that don't want us to have that power. So the first thing that we need to learn is to trust the faith that we have within us as an active force. If we have faith, then we know this, that in any dark situation, there is light at the end of the tunnel. In any difficulty where you've got financial problems or relationship problems or problems with the boss or whatever, that dark moment of realization that you're not free, the first thing to do is to affirm freedom. That's faith. I am free to be who I am, whatever the circumstances. That's faith. When you have that, then you have magic. If you give that up, if you allow yourself to be intimidated by those who tell you that you're not free, you must work for your living. You must do work that you don't enjoy for your living. If you're willing to believe that, then you're surrendering your faith. Because faith is the faith that we are free, and we are free to be who we are. Now, it's not enough simply to have the magic in that form of having faith in light, and that light can always find a way to overcome darkness. That's the necessary but not sufficient condition for magic. You also must know how to manipulate the physical world to create into form that which was simply an idea. If you want to turn an idea into something physical, measurable, observable, then you need something else. You need to understand how it all works and to be able to organize that. Well, how it all works has been studied by many people over many millennia, and nothing yet has been created which is better than the idea of numbers, basically. We can organize our thoughts. In other words, we can shape the mind according to patterns where the understanding of the pattern is made clear by numbers. So the primary idea that we must reach eventually, if we are to be awakened, is the number is 1, and there is no other number. If we don't understand that, then we're not quite yet awakened. But this is only 1. We're in the middle of oneness, and we're at the center of oneness. We're at the circumference of oneness, and we are oneness, and we're under the power of oneness. All of these explanations of where we are in relationship to oneness would be evidence that we haven't understood what oneness is. Oneness is, and the only number is 1. Okay, got that. However, I'm also interested in reaching out to interact with this illusion that we call the world. And when you do that, you need another set of numbers. So if we look at threeness, I'm studying threeness in great depth with the Holy Trinity by suggesting that freedom, involvement, and creativity are enough to understand the workings of the spiritual life. If we look at the number 4, we can see how to bring that into form. The secret of the number 4 is the secret of form. And we study that best in using the elements, and I'm going to come to that in a minute. If we use the number 7, which is another favourite of mine, then we tune into the 7th harmonic, the mystery of seeing life through 7 lenses, and we get the mythological world of unicorns and elves and fairies, that which is definitely real for those of us that can see it, but we can't actually give it physical form. That's the secret of the number 4. And there are other numbers. 5 is the number of power and creativity and so on. And we can study 4 elements as the number 5 by joining them together as ether as well. So let's look at those 4 elements. Start with the earth element. The earth is all about physicality, and the physicality of our lives, the physical body, the hard circumstances of the environment. These things bring duration to our ideas. The idea of being James, for example, is not something I can really get to grips with unless I've got 80 or 90 years to do that in. I need that amount of time to see what James looks like in the form of the physical world. And duration gives us the illusion of continuity. Nothing continues. Everything changes from one moment, millisecond, to the next. Nothing is the same as it was a moment ago, but we have the idea of continuity and constancy, and that is afforded to us by the earth. The earth brings us rules of existence, such as if you plant an apple seed, you're going to get an apple tree, not a pear tree. Things like that. And if the sun goes down tonight, it'll come up tomorrow morning. There are some facts, some certainties, and these facts are measurable. So one of the first things, in fact, the primary thing that we have to do when we apply magic is to check out the physical reality that we're working with, to measure it, to know what the facts of the matter are, and not be silly saying that something is the case when it just clearly is not the case. And most people who study the esoteric mysteries get caught up on this. They fail to understand that to study magic is the privilege of somebody who's already studied the world. And you need to understand how the world works, or you'll get somebody telling you you have to move on because you have no authority, or there's nothing to eat, so you focus on getting food, and so on. You're totally distracted by the tremendously demanding aspects of physicality. And the earth element is that. It's the test that we go through to make sure that we're competent and real and authentic, and we're not silly and pink and fluffy and just, the earth plane is what grounds us and says that is true. And for a physical statement, that's useful. These are the facts. That's what truth means in the earth plane. These are the facts, and they're measurable. So we have to learn how to cope with life on the physical level before we can ever even think of anything else in magic. And we have to recognize that in every situation. What are the facts here? Don't even consider trying to change a situation that you haven't understood on that factual level. That's the earth element. Briefly. The water element brings us much more into the individual sense of things. There's something going on which is a mood, a zeitgeist, which expresses itself in fashion and technology and politics and all these entertainments that we have and stories that we like to tell, and the collective feeling of the age. It changes as well. It moves in a different way to the physical statements of life. And each of us is subject to that. And that also brings whirls and eddies, shall we call them, in our personal circumstances. So this changing mood of reality is not only universal for the population of our species, but it is also local. So the family goes through its mood, and the one-to-one relationships that you have and the friendships, they all go through changes, some more quickly than others. And each of us is individually measuring that change on the level of emotion and feeling, and we are deeply swayed by that. I would say that most decisions that people make are made on the level of emotion rather than physical demands or mental clarity. Most things that we do are based upon our feelings. And it may be that that sounds a bit strange because you feel you'd like to do this, but you're constrained to do that. The point is that you've got a stronger feeling of constraint than the freedom to do what your desire nature tells you to do. And you don't see that as a feeling. That we have to work for our living, with that dull, heavy sort of mood. That's just a feeling that people believe in. It's not true, not on the level of a magician. So everyone is going through this feeling reality, and those of us who are not sensitive to that are never going to control anything. We have to be sensitive not only to what we are feeling and notice how we're likely, by having passionate feelings, to warp our clarity of thinking, bend the narrative to suit our expectations. We also need to know what other people are feeling so that we don't act against their flow of being. And a magician has to understand how to be sensitive to the watery element in a situation. How does it feel? How do I feel? How do they feel? What's the interaction, the empathy, the sympathy between my environment of people and my own present situation with its own problems and hopes and dreams? And that aspect, the watery aspect, is a component, a necessary component of magic. Now, the fire element is the urge we have to move. We are essentially active beings. We move. Very few people fail to move. If they are failing to move, it's because they're imprisoned by ill health in a hospital bed or by the government or whatever. People move. We all like to move. And that fiery element within us doesn't always move in the appropriate direction. It's like an inner restlessness that must come out. And that urge to do something is our fieriness. And we tend then to act upon the other elements in a way which is just not sensitive. In the case of fire interacting with water, you could want to do something and somebody's just not in the mood to do it, but you want to do it anyway. And that creates a clash because you're not being sensitive enough. And if you want to do something and it's actually not possible because the earth reality tells you that that's not a workable thing that you want to do, then you'll break something. I want to go here, but there is something there. Nevertheless, I want to go there. It breaks. You might bash into a broken a glass jar or something because your body wants to move in that direction, and the physicality of the glass is trying to stop you, and there's this clash that breaks a situation. So our fiery nature is insensitive, and it's meant to be insensitive because if we were sensitive, we couldn't act. We need to act without sensitivity if we're to act passionately. And fire is the inner passion that we have. If we forego that, if we allow ourselves to be browbeaten by society saying, no, you can't do that, you're not allowed, you're not powerful enough, you're not strong enough in your money or sort of strong enough in your position or strong enough in your physicality, you can't do that. And there's a part of us that really wants to do that and will try, that determination. But then there's another part of us that gives up because we keep failing and we lose our fire. And we die off, basically. People lose the life force. They get tired of failing because physicality is so heavy and they lose their fire. And if you think of that on a physical level, you just have to think about how vibrant and vital young people are compared to old people. That's the fire within a person dies down in time. And yet in a magician's situation, when you're looking for the fire within yourself, without that fire, you can't break through. The whole thing that we're trying to do here is to break through. There is a situation that we don't want. We want it different, so we have to break through to change it. And without fire, you can't do that. You can't make omelets without breaking eggs. That's the image here. So we have to break a few eggs with our fieriness and be insensitive to the pain it causes other people. There's a generally understood wisdom, which I disagree with, that my philosophy in life is to do what I like as long as I don't hurt anyone else. I don't think I can hurt anyone else. That's their business. My business is to do whatever I like. And if they don't like it, just to make it clear to me that they don't like it. But it's not my business to look after their boundaries. That wouldn't teach them very much. I know how unpopular and outrageous that idea is, but that's within the spiritual teachings that I've read. Just do what you can do. Let the other be responsible for stopping you if you're out of order. However, if we look at the air element, we would not often make such mistakes. The air element is the mind. And if you think about how frequently the mind changes, a new thought comes in, and we have a new belief and a new understanding, and we have a confusion of understandings, and the airiness, like the wind, it just constantly changes. There is no stability of the air element in nature. The wind just moves all the time, and that's also true of the mind. Very few people, in fact, probably none, can actually still the mind completely. We can approach that in meditation, and meditation is the attempt for us to familiarize ourselves enough with the air element to gain a measure of control over it. But we can only hold that meditative state for a period of time. Anything longer than an hour is exceptionally unusual. And even for 5 minutes, most people would find that difficult. Meditators can train themselves to do it for an hour or something. But it isn't easy. It takes a lot of practice. So to control the air element is very difficult. And we're starting to think now, how does a magician do that? How do we control the mind? And that's a question that takes decades to study, to learn what to do with your mind, to shape the mind so you think only positive thoughts. You think usefully. Your mind is known to be the tool of magic that creates intentionality. To train yourself to be able to do that requires huge dedication and prioritization. So here are the four elements: the earth, the water, the fire, and the air. They're very different from each other, indeed. And yet, the magician learns all four, and not only individually learning all four, but also to learn how all four can come together as, shall we call it, the fifth element, which is ether. And then we remember that one of the necessary conditions of magic is to create sacredness, to live in sacred space as much as you can. Now this is ether. Ether is sacredness. All of the four elements in balance. Ether gives rise to the four elements. And the four elements, when in balance, give rise to ether. That's the understanding that we have. And we have to embody this within ourselves to practice magic. We have to become capable of dealing with each of the four elements, and yet not investing overly much in any of them, and being able at any point in time to pull ourselves back to this sense of spiritual balance that the ether element represents. So ether is a very refined energy indeed. We have to be in control of our physical situation. Now that takes some doing. We have to be in control of our emotional body. We have to be centered and non-emotional. That takes a bigger challenge. We have to control what we do after acting upon the world, and to get things done and to crack open situations using force, in necessary force, but not more than necessary. That finesse of just using the minimum amount of force to get the job done without violation. Nothing wrong with pressure and force and breaking things. That's not violent. But to do that with more force than necessary, that's violence. That doesn't lead to a good result. That's difficult to develop finesse of action. Very difficult indeed, even more difficult than controlling your feelings. To go one step beyond that, to control your thoughts with the air element, that's a greater challenge indeed. And then to control the sacredness of the space that you're in, this takes real mastery. And I've seen this done in a moment on a bus in Turkey once. I met a Sufi master, and we were traveling on the bus together. And the buses in Turkey are harsh. Well, they were in 1980, this is. The atmosphere is frightening. All the men are hiding their knives and so on. It was a time where machismo was really big in Turkey. And I think it may have changed in the last few decades, but I don't know. Anyway, the Sufi master, he got on the bus and he just lifted somebody's suitcase to put it in the rack. He offered his seat to somebody. He smiled. He just calmed the energy down. And for the first time in my life, there was this atmosphere on the bus that was wonderful. It was joyful. It was innocent. It was sparkling. It was just lovely. And he created ether, the atmosphere of ether on the bus, out of just doing very simple things. And the trick to doing this, first of all, you have to master all of the 5 elements. That takes time. But when you actually can do that, the thing to do is to recognize what is, to tune into that, to find that element within yourself or combination of elements within yourself, and then move the situation towards ether by introducing the opposite elements. So if you come across a group of school children screaming and laughing in the playground, that's a mixture of air and fire. Now if you say to them, slow down children, it won't make any difference. They really won't slow down because you haven't matched their condition. You have to play with them and to become fiery and airy yourself. And then you become the center of their attention because you are more so. You're doing it better than them. And then little by little, introduce sensitivity. Introduce physicality. Look, it's almost time for lunch. Let's just have a look. Mary's feeling a bit hungry here. You start introducing earth and water concepts, and then they'll move into that level of ether. That's the challenge for the magician, anyway, to turn every situation into one where they're controlling the sacred space with their clear intentionality.